Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm Brooke Brigham, I'm the attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham, I'm the therapist.
And today we are going to be talking about the Hulu documentary called Call Her Alex. And it is about Alex Cooper, who is the host, creator of the Call Her Daddy podcast, which is one of the biggest podcasts, if not the biggest podcast, going at the moment. And so it's a very she's an interesting person. Obviously, she's garnered the attention of millions of people, and her latest Sirius XM radio podcast deal is worth $125 million over several years. But what I'm trying to remember, I think she's been doing this for like 5 years?
No, 7. The podcast Call Her Daddy was 2018.
Okay.
But I have a lot of thoughts about this stuff. Do you want to read a synopsis?
Yeah, I have a short little synopsis to start us off here. So let's look at that. Okay. So Call Her Alex is a 2-part documentary about the rise of Call Her Daddy's Alex Cooper. The documentary traces Cooper's origin story as a bullied middle schooler making home videos in her suburban basement, her complicated history as a Division I soccer player at Boston University, the launch of Call Her Daddy in 2018, the fallout with her original co-host Sophia Franklin, and what it's like making today's less sexual, celebrity-driven, and highly lucrative version of the podcast. Call Her Alex is an interesting, if somewhat limited, look at the woman behind the $125 million podcast deal. There are a few glimpses into her off-mic personality. Her husband, Matt Kaplan, a film producer who is incredibly involved in the Call Her Daddy business, reveals... I'm sorry. I'm not going to say that part. Cooper herself identifies as a zillennial. She was born in 1994. She also offers up tons of footage from her home video days that shows the now very blonde star was born with red hair and was bullied for it, she says. More revealing is the fact that her parents, Brian and Lori Cooper, steadfastly supported her career even at the beginning, when she was recording particularly graphic episodes. Both appear throughout the documentary and insist they always encourage their daughter, despite some shaming from other family members and friends in their community.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts about this documentary. Okay.
Go.
One is, I was a little bored. You and I have been talking about this, that you watched a little bit of it and you're like, I think we should cover it. And then you were like, wait, I don't think we should. I'm bored now. I don't think we should cover it. And then you watch some more and you're like, okay, I'm back. And I like the documentary. It could have been one part. It could have been one part that's like an hour and a half. It really could have been. There were some things in there that I were like, this is not driving the story along. This has got nothing to do with anything. It is not important. And while maybe it's interesting to that person, we don't need to see this. Despite that, I thought it's interesting because I think there's some fascinating things about her. One is that, and Dave Portnoy talks about this in the documentary, you look at her and people must think like, oh God, how did she, how was she able to, in 7 years, reach the top of something? And we've talked about this, like, how long does it take to get really good at something? How long does it take to do something? And her story reminded me so much of the stories in that book, written with the 10,000 hours, the Beatles and the 10,000 hours. I'm forgetting
Malcolm
the name of
Gladwell.
it. Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Outliers. And what he talked about was, one of the stories he talked about is like how, Bill Gates was able to, he knew so much about computers before he even graduated from high school because he had access to computers. And so I think she was a great example of someone who, had been doing this thing for years and years and years and years and loved it and was drawn to it. And, so when she did start doing it professionally, you're a little bit like, yeah, okay, yeah. You can see how easy it would be for her to just dive right in. And I think it's that, and coupled with, I think she really lucked out with some timing. Like,
Mhm.
she absolutely, every step of the way, timing helped her tremendously.
Mhm.
One is the show debuting in 2018, right after, right, the women's movement and the Me Too
Me
movement,
too, yeah.
and the fact that people, women, and being able to talk about sexuality became much more acceptable. I think the fallout with Sophia in 2020, when everyone's home, and so
Mhm.
here's a time, and she starts talking, and she naturally could pivot to, I'm not going to talk about sex so much, I'm going to talk about my mental health, which is something that everyone wanted to talk about, and then being able to pivot to the celebrity interviews. Like, she really, each time, I'm not saying she absolutely is a huge part of her success, but she's someone who really lucked out on, she had been preparing for this thing her whole life,
Mhm.
and she just, right time. Every single piece was the right time. And finally, this is the last thing I'll say about this. I do also think that if these two women were average looking, it
Mhm.
would not have taken off. It would, I mean, I'm sorry. And Alex said that. She said, I pumped up the lips, I made us
Mhm.
look like Barbie doll, these kind of Barbie dolls. And people may have thoughts about that, absolutely, for her doing that. But she really got it. She got that, like, if I'm going to do the show, I have to play up these parts of me. And I think that for Gen X women, we were so told not to be confident. We were
Mhm.
so hammered down. So Alex Cooper seems like a bitch. She seems
Yeah.
like, it's very easy to label her that, as the ice blonde hair, and she has that look. She looks like Carolyn Bessette in some moments, right?
Mhm.
She's got this
Mhm.
Gwyneth Paltrow sort of otherworldly look about
Mhm.
her, coupled with the fact that she's talking about these things that are, we were not, so we weren't supposed to be confident, we weren't supposed to talk about sex, we weren't doing any of that. And I can see how young women of her age really responded to her, and I can see how maybe people our age would be like, what is this?
Yeah.
Because we that was my initial reaction when these millennials were showing up being so confident. I'm like, no, 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 you're not supposed to be that confident. And then it's like, oh wait, no, you should be. Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of my probably my biggest takeaway is that wow, like things have changed
Yes.
because yeah, and okay, when we're old, like okay, so when we were in high school and college, like if you did not talk about sex because if you were having sex, you know, outside of a serious long-term relationship, you were a slut.
Yes.
If you went out and you had a one night stand or you had sex with someone who, you wasn't your serious boyfriend, like you were locked down, you
Mhm.
were a whore.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. And the only women who were talking about sex were, like these porn stars who would go on Howard Stern. And there's a lot of mentioning of Howard Stern throughout
Mhm.
this. But it's very different. I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, there's similarities, but differences. But yeah, like I've only come to know her and because she's now doing these interviews. Like
Mhm.
the first time I ever saw one was when she interviewed Kamala Harris.
Mhm.
And so now she's getting these big interviews. She did Sarah Jessica Parker last week. I watched that. But yeah, when they're showing the clips of when she was doing the podcast, I was like, this and the live show, and so
Mhm.
it's like this is mortifying. Like, what are they, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like they pan out into the audience, and there's all these young women with these big smiles on their faces. They're
Mhm.
so happy to just be hearing a woman talking about sex so freely.
Mhm.
And it was just strange to me. It was, I
Yeah.
mean, I really felt old. And I'm not putting down anything that she's doing because like you said, it's you should be able to talk about it and be confident about it. And you shouldn't be shamed for having sex and all that kind of stuff. But it's just this is new to me.
Mhm. Yeah. I think some of this is generational, and I think it's
Mhm.
also, some of it is how people are raised and people's comfort levels. Cuz I'll be honest with you, I am not one of these people that wants to sit around and talk about sex. I don't want to talk about locker room sex. I don't want to talk about it. Like, and it's not that
Mhm.
I'm shamed or I feel this way or that way. It's just a little bit like, I don't really need to discuss this with other people. Like, I don't need to have these conversations with other people. Like, is this normal? Is this, that? I think that for some people they do, and okay, that's fine. But I've never been one of those people that wanted to sit around and talk about the nitty gritty of your sex life. Some of it is the way we were raised, because again, our mother was raised by a Southern, and I have my friend Lisa, who was also from the South, was also
Mhm.
very close, really, there's
Mhm.
something very proper about that. And that was kind of how we were raised. Like, you don't talk about that. You don't talk about bodily functions, like very
Mhm.
proper in that way. Um, so I've never felt that, but and so it's great that if this is what you want to talk about, that's wonderful. You want to talk about it. I don't think that I would have listened to Call Her Daddy if I was her same age. Like, I don't think I would ever be excited, like, want to listen to this. But I think it's great. I'm all for it. But I do
But
also
has it
think
gone
they're
too
over
far?
in
Do you think
I
it's
think they're
gone?
over indexing how much people really want to dig into this
Yeah.
stuff.
I think it's gone a little far. I mean, I do think, I having a daughter who's 22. Yeah, young women, they want to talk about it in the sense of like, is this normal, or
Mhm.
um just be more open about things that
Yeah.
happen and what to expect. But she takes it to a real extreme.
Mhm.
The whole blowjob thing, the
And I
gluck
still don't know what this technique is. I'm like, I didn't even get it. Are we gonna? Kept thinking we were gonna get some instructions. I'm like, there's no
yeah.
instructions. I'm like, that
Yeah.
seemed a little bit like, well,
Well, it
okay,
was
I'd like to hear that.
pretty graphic. I don't know if they edited it. I don't know. I've never heard the whole bit, so I don't
To
I
go
don't know.
back
But
and listen to it.
but
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I don't that I don't know. Maybe because that to me seems like that's more like locker room talk.
Mhm.
Or I don't even know, locker room talk. What a stupid stupid phrase, but that's the only phrase
Yeah.
we have for it. Um yeah, it's just I think she takes it maybe just a wee bit too far, and I don't know if all women really want that much information. I
Mhm.
don't I don't know. Why am I even speaking on this?
Yeah.
No.
I don't know. I mean, definitely
I'm
we're
so
old.
unqualified.
Yeah. We are old. And so I think she represents in many ways a new kind of woman, a woman
Mhm.
who is, you know, that is looking at and can see, like Monica Lewinsky was, a victim in all of this. I mean,
Mhm.
that young women are looking at a lot of the things that we endured very differently and looking at it differently than we looked at it, for sure. And there is a lot more freedom and sexuality and all of that. Even though, this is the 80s and 90s and it was more of a modern world, it was much more provincial. There was a lot,
Mhm.
that men and women's roles were very defined in that way. um but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's like, I believe in it and I think this is great and all of it, but at the same time, I don't know if I would buy a ticket for it. But again, I'm not her audience.
Right, we're not
So,
her audience, so we wouldn't be buying tickets. But I think, yeah, I mean, and going back to what you said about, there's no such thing as overnight success.
yes.
Has been making these videos, and since even before middle school. I mean, you
Mhm.
see her, she's like maybe 10 or something. Um, and yeah, she always felt very comfortable in front of the camera,
Mhm.
and she's gone through such a physical metamorphosis, even
Yeah.
even since the time when she was doing Call Her Daddy, and her hair was more kind of bleach blonde, and she wore more makeup. Now she has curated this look, like you said, this ephemeral look, this
Mhm.
Gwyneth Paltrow type, where the hair is not so platinum. It's like this
Mhm.
perfect blonde. Her skin is just
Mhm.
like, I think she's had a nose job, maybe.
Mm.
She's transformed herself.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was intentional, or um, because
Y
she really toned down. Some of the footage, I was unclear like all the footage we saw where she was on stage with all those men and she was in like this lingerie type thing, and was that all the past
Yeah.
tour?
Yeah. That was all the Tribeca. Yeah.
Okay, so she was still doing a lot of that, but she was sort of, I think, trying to pivot into doing these monologues where it was more like women's empowerment and
Mm.
um not so much of the sex stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and they talk about this, that she's evolved, she's grown,
Mhm.
she's changed, which I think you have to be. We've talked about Howard Stern. Howard Stern's evolved and grown and changed. Like,
Mhm.
yes, artists do because people do. You can't just, when you stay with one thing. So I'm all for her pivoting and shifting and changing. And having different opinions. And yeah, I mean, she has more money now, so she can get the really good highlights. She can get the
Mhm.
really good haircut and the hair
Yeah, true.
extensions. And some of this is just where she is in her life. um I think that what is the special sauce with her really is that she truly is fearless.
Mhm.
There's a fearlessness, and I think that it is, as a woman, we don't get to be so fearless. There aren't
Mhm.
many of us that are
Mhm.
like that, and I think that's the part about her that maybe people love and people hate. That
Yeah,
women love and hate, I should
right.
say.
Right. Yeah, and it was interesting too cuz yeah, her parents were so supportive.
Well, her mom's a therapist.
Yeah,
I
but
was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah.
but you're a
Very, yeah."
therapist. If your if your daughter like was out there doing that, like what would you think?
I mean, again, I think, again, I would wanna support my kid, but I would be like,
Mhm.
"Ooh, okay, let's see how this goes." I mean,
Mhm.
I would certainly be nervous for my kid because I would know that this is gonna last forever and ever and ever, and
Mhm.
I would be very nervous. "Oh my god, what if you decide you wanna be a lawyer? Like, this is on the air." Like,
Right.
but again,
Yeah,
I don't think
never
she ever
goes
wanted
away.
that. I think
Yeah.
this is the life she wanted. So, she was never gonna wanna go to get an MBA. Or at all.
Yeah.
And she really very much is, a business person. And I think she very much lucked out by the Barstool Sports. I mean, how rare is that? One episode and Dave Portnoy calls you up and now you've got this deal at a network, and it's a terrible deal.
It's a
But I
terrible
mean,
deal, yeah.
yeah, but even still, like, that's a very, like, kind of, again, I think her being a woman and her beauty has helped her and hurt her. I
Yeah.
think it's done. She's had, it's given her some it's given her things that it wouldn't have given other people, but it's also made it really muddy in some ways. But again, it's
So eventually the Call Her Daddy podcast was making like millions of dollars for Barstool Sports,
mhm.
and Alex and um what's her name? Sophia.
Sophia.
Sophia, they weren't weren't seeing any of that money. And so they went to Dave to renegotiate, and he said, "Well, if you stay for one more year, then you can own Call Her Daddy." Sophia didn't want to stay, and
Mhm.
Alex did. So
Mhm.
the rest is history, and that was a really, really smart thing for her
Yeah.
to do. She didn't let her ego get in her way,
Mhm.
because she could have been like, "Ugh, well, I'm making millions of dollars here, and you should be paying me more,"
Mhm.
um, and kind of burn her bridges with him. And to this day, he obviously speaks very highly of her.
Yeah, I mean, they still, well, I follow Dave Portnoy because of Miss Peaches,
Mhm.
and then Pete the Beagle, and now he's fostering a new dog, Pops.
Oh,
Pops is
wow.
going to be, I'm going to tell you this right now, that dog's been there one day, foster fail. This dog is fitting right in. And this dog is now living in a multi-million dollar mansion. You think this dog is going to want to go to someone else's house?
No.
Pops is like, I have made it. I am in it. Anywho, but I also thought that it was, I mean, I know people have a lot of feelings about Dave. Dave and I have different political views, but
Mhm.
one thing I thought was very smart about that deal is he must have sat there and really calculated, like, listen, I don't want to burn a bridge. Like, I'm
Mhm.
making a lot of money from this. If I can squeeze this out for another year, like,
Mhm.
how long can I squeeze this? And then, okay, you can take it.
Mhm.
It was like both parties, and that's a good negotiation. Um, and I think that's the other part of it too is that I think what makes Alex different than maybe a lot of people that are in the podcasting space is a lot of people want to um I think that this is what she's been doing her whole life. Like
Mhm.
making, she's been doing some version of this her entire life, that this is who she is. It isn't something that she's doing to as a stepping stone to something else. I think a lot of times people start podcasts like, I'm going to run for office, or I want to get movie star parts, or I want to sell t-shirts. I
Mhm.
think for her, I think what made it successful was it was never about that for her.
Well, yeah, I mean, she was constantly pivoting and just trying different things, and she said that, at first it was kinda hard to get advertisers at first because of the
Yes.
nature of the, um, discussion, and so she started selling merch. She started
Mhm.
making all of these, sweatshirts and T-shirts with all of her different, slogans or things she says, and was making millions of dollars in merch. So,
Mhm.
she, yeah, just kinda kept going and didn't give up, and, um,
Yes.
here we are. But going back to so something like at the end of the first episode, we get into I mean, I was trying to think of how this fits into her story. She had this real pivotal experience where she, um, was recruited to Boston University to, play on their Division I women's soccer team, and she had a coach who, um, harassed her,
Mhm.
for, the first 3 years until, she finally just couldn't take it anymore. But it was sexual harassment. She never,
Mhm.
like, physically touched her, but she was trying to get there. She
Mhm.
was, like, trying to groom her. She was controlling. She wanted to know everything about, um, her life and her sex life, and it just got worse and worse and worse as time went on.
Commenting on her body, commenting,
Mhm.
watching game film, watching herself over and over and over again. Yeah, it seemed like she said the freshman year it wasn't that bad, but sophomore year it started to escalate,
Mhm.
and junior year it became even more. And what's interesting is she obviously was very much like, no, 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 like, I don't
Mhm.
want this. But it's almost a little bit like, oh, this person really got fixated on you, because
Mhm.
usually groomers will move on to someone else that they can groom.
Mhm. Mhm.
But she started to this soccer coach, according to Alex, became started to retaliate, and basically like made one of her good friends, also named Alex, got kicked off the team as
Mhm.
punishment to this Alex. And I guess they went to the NCAA tournament, and I guess Alex was like a star player, and she wasn't played at all. And we saw the footage, and how awkward and weird that was after they won this championship. The way the coach was talking about
Yeah,
that
because
was very weird.
they were asking her, like, why she didn't play, um, Alex, I believe, and she just kinda sat there and said nothing.
Hmm.
She was a weirdo, clearly. Yeah, and then finally, Alex goes to the administration at the school and says, "This is what's happening to me," and
Hmm.
they didn't do anything. They didn't
Yeah.
fire her, um, and she ended up getting, like, she couldn't play any longer because I heard her tell this story on another show or interview or something where, the coach insisted. So Alex had this one night class, and the coach insisted on driving her to the night class. Maybe it was after practice or something.
Hmm.
But of course, she was so uncomfortable being alone in a car with her at night
Hmm.
that she didn't go to class. And
Mm.
so then she got in trouble because they're very strict about
Yeah,
if you
the
want to stay on the
grades.
team, you cannot miss classes unless you're deathly ill or something. So she just didn't show up to class because she didn't want to get into the car with that woman.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they said, "Oh, well, you missed these classes, so you're suspended or whatever." And then eventually just got kicked off the team.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a horrible story, and the school's lucky they didn't get sued or something.
Yeah, well, I too am a graduate of Boston University, and none of this surprises me at all because BU has always been about money
Mhm.
and athletics is it's big. I saw my old dorm and some of the some of the scenes there. But yeah, I mean BU is about money and I mean like most higher institutions, but BU is
Mhm.
very much about money and I'm not surprised that this is what that apparently she went to the dean of athletics and they were like, "Well, what do you want? What do you want? What?" And basically they said, "Well, we're not going to fire her. So
Mhm.
it's, either you deal with this or you don't." And the other thing that was interesting too is, she had a full scholarship and that was the other part
Mhm.
of it was this was very much this power thing
Yeah,
because if she
financial.
fought back, that meant that she potentially could lose her scholarship and BU is goddamn expensive. That's the other
Mhm.
thing too. It's not worth the money. So, don't tell my parents I said that. But
I think they know.
yeah, well, I had a great time. I'm happy, and I got a good education. And I'm a college graduate, so I think they're fine now. But the what was I going to say? But the power dynamics of what's going on was it's unbelievable, and you can see how this. I mean, she's 21-year-old young woman,
Mhm.
and here she is very confident and she's got her parents on her side and you can see how even she was like I got to just for my sanity
Mhm.
for my I just got to let it go, I got to let this thing go. But I
Yeah.
do want to say because I did look up a little bit about what's happening and apparently um the I guess a bunch of people signed some kind of petition supporting this soccer coach basically saying listen, and this is such a 2025 way of doing it because the petition was basically saying listen, we are not discounting Alex's story, we're not disputing it, that's her truth, right? But what we're saying is that we have all had very positive experiences with her, we've all
Mhm.
had we've never had issues like all these former soccer players, all these former people coming out saying that. So again, I think it will be interesting to see if maybe some other people join because I find it hard to believe that Alex is the only one she harassed
Yeah.
allegedly. That I
Is
feel
she
like maybe
still
some more
working
will
there?
come out, but
Is the coach still working there?
it sounds like based on this thing I saw, I was just looking it up. It sounds like maybe she's still there.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, just because it didn't happen to all these other people doesn't really
and
mean
they're owning that.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the 20 like 30 years
Yeah.
ago, it would have been like she's a liar. This didn't happen. But now
Mhm.
it's okay, we cannot dispute this person's truth, but
Mhm.
this is our. So they're all standing BU, all of it standing behind this coach. So,
Hmm.
anyhow,
Well, okay. So
but it
I
ruined
don't
soccer
know.
for her.
Yeah, and that
That
that had been her life. I mean, she grew
yeah.
up playing soccer. She loved playing soccer. She was obviously very good. And yeah, that must have been really devastating.
And this is the same thing I was saying about the P. Diddy trial and Cassie. Like, I bet you Cassie wanted to be a singer her whole life. Right?
Mhm.
All these women, like these
Right. They
right
wanted to be
all
famous
yeah,
stars.
all
Yeah.
these women that, like that get taken they this is and so you ruin this thing.
Mhm.
Anyway, sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
So we talked about, okay, so yeah, so after college, she does the YouTube channel, she does that moves into the podcast. Now she's solo.
Yeah, she really
Um,
doesn't get into because I think things between her and Sophia were tough before the final breakup. I think that but she doesn't really get into that at all. Basically, it's other people saying, I guess the two of them realized that they didn't have as much in common as they thought they
yeah,
did.
she said they described her, I think at one point, as her best friend, but then she said that she barely knew her, like, before they started this.
Yeah,
Like
they've
they
been roommates for like 3 months or something.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I don't think they really knew each other at all.
hmm
Um, so so then she's like, where is she gonna take the show? And then COVID comes along, and so now she's doing these solo episodes where she's just talking, and that's when she decided to just kind of let her guard down and be really vulnerable. Started talking about how she was in therapy because she was really an emotional wreck from the past couple of years. And that's when more women started to listen, because it was less of the kind of silliness that the show was with Sophia, and it started getting more serious. And they had that woman on there who does that couples therapy,
Yeah,
Dr.
Doctor.
Orna.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who seemed to be a fan.
Yeah, she seemed to be a fan. It was kind of random that she was just in there, but yeah, she said that, that's kind of her that's her thing, that she's able to be vulnerable and people like that. And a lot of I can't remember who said this, but maybe it was her or there was another therapist, I think, but that she equated the sex talk as kind of a substitute for vulnerability, where it's not true vulnerability, but you're kind of cracking
Yeah.
you're cracking the surface there. But then she started getting into like real emotional vulnerability and talking about relationships and stuff.
And again, that's why, as I was saying before, like I've never been someone who wanted to sit around and talk about sex because it didn't ever feel very real to me. It didn't feel like a real conversation. It didn't feel like, it just
Like
didn't.
connecting, like a
Yeah,
way
it
to
just kind of
connect.
felt like you're all just one upping each other and who can be more outrageous and who can say
Mhm.
this and who can say that. Um, and she also mentioned this too, is after she met, I guess Matt was known as Mr. Sexy Zoom Man. I guess they met in COVID.
Mhm.
And she talked about that too, is like, yeah, and Matt changed me. And it's like, yeah, I think that very much when you are 21, 22, 23, yeah, the beginning of the show was that.
Mhm.
That the show, she had to. She had to pivot.
Yeah, I mean, you can only do
Um,
that for so long.
yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I mean, listen, it's very impressive what she's been able to do. These deals that she's gotten, the 60 millions with Spotify, which I guess she was only there for a year or two.
mhm.
And then this 3-year deal with Sirius, it's very impressive. I mean, to sell out those huge shows and stadiums, all these people are
Mhm.
so excited to see her and see these live shows. It's
Yeah, and
crazy.
she was one of the first people to she really got podcasting and how to do it. She was one of the
Mhm.
first people to regularly, video uh, I'm so old. Video record, what is the word?
Tape,
Videotape.
tapes,
How does
tape.
record? But no, record can be sound. Anyway, whatever
She
it's
was the first
called.
person to use video.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. So the
Yes.
first person now everyone's podcast is on video. Here we are. We're on
Yes.
YouTube. And
We got beaten down to
we
doing it.
had to. It's like this
Yes.
is where people now get their podcast because it's not enough just to listen to you. They want to see you, they want
Yeah.
that connection. So she was one of the first people to do that. And,
Mhm.
she had this very carefree style, like, she's always in sweats with her hair
Mhm.
in a ponytail, like she's
Yeah.
no or little or no makeup, she's not getting all gussied up. Like some of these people who do podcasts and they get so dressed up in full hair and makeup, and
Mhm.
I'm like, I could never do that. Like we're recording these things at like after work at 6 o'clock at
Yeah.
night and at random times and stuff. But anyway, she had her finger on the pulse of podcasting,
Yeah.
and what can I
No.
say? She
'Cause
just
she
took
got it.
off.
But it was really funny too because when she first decided to do the podcast, she's like, "Isn't this what old people do? They like
Yeah,
to
like
listen
the
to that because they like
radio.
radio." I'm like, "Oh dear God. We're not that old." You get to a certain age and you need to multitask. You just
Yes, yes.
you gotta be able to do many things at once.
Well, that's what is so attractive to me about podcasting is you can listen to a podcast and get a bunch of work done, and
Mhm.
so to sit down, I guess you could have it in the running in the background or something, but
Yeah.
yeah, but to actually sit down and watch a podcast, that to me seems like a waste of time.
But please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
But please don't, yeah, not not
Please don't turn us off now.
you don't have to watch the whole thing, like, you can just, subscribe and, watch
Yeah.
it here and there. But anyway,
Yeah. But
so
one of the last things that was said was about how, and I do agree with this, and I think this is her appeal, is that Alex is very much, she's a true girl's girl. She
mhm,
truly is. She is not the kind of girl that, is going to steal your boyfriend. She's not the kind of girl that's going to talk badly behind your back and be a bitch or whatever. And I think that's the thing about her, and I think that's the appeal of her, is that she is very much about, again, it was about women are the spotlight and men are the side of
mhm,
everything, much like how
mhm,
Sex and the City did it and some of
mhm,
these other things. Um,
yeah.
anyway, so, but
So
again, it could have been one episode,
yeah,
personally.
well, the real boring part to me was when they started the tour and all these things were going wrong, and
Mhm.
she's stressed out and she's worried, and that wasn't really very compelling to me. But anyway, in the middle of that, the Unwell tour, she gets a call that she's going to be interviewing Kamala Harris,
Mhm.
and that talk about a big break. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the first time I saw her or watched her
Yeah.
podcast. So,
Well, I mean, and I think she gets frustrated. Alex often gets frustrated with being compared to Howard Stern or
mhm,
some male figure. But if you really do look at the 2024 election, I mean, Kamala Harris went to call her daddy and
mhm,
Stern, and Trump went to Joe Rogan, and you know what I mean. Like, yeah, you are the equivalent of the female version
yeah,
of this show. Um, so
yeah, and the
yeah, that it's huge.
demographic. Yeah, she was trying to tap into that demographic of millennials, zillennials, or whatever.
Mhm.
That's I don't. So I guess
Because
if
she was
you're in
born in 1994. So so the Gen Z starts in 1997. So there are these group of
Gen
people.
Z,
Gen Z starts the Gen Z. Yeah, the earliest Gen Zers are born in 1997.
seriously?
Yeah,
I thought it was
Layla's
like
a Gen Z.
she's born 2003.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, 1997. Because the earliest
1997?
1997. Yes,
1997 is like 28 years ago.
yes. So that
That's
is
too
the
long for a
okay.
generation.
Okay. So generations are about 15 years. So
Uh-huh.
millennials were 1980, 81 to 97. And
Oh,
97 to 2012 is when you are is Gen Z. So
wow.
if you were born 2012 and later, you're Generation Alpha. So in all of these things, like for example, I'm a true blue Gen Xer. Like 1973, I was born right in the middle of it. But there are a lot of people that were born in 1965, 66, 67 that are like these cusper, part boomer, part Gen X. Same thing
Mhm.
with millennial and Gen Xers. So all these people that are kind of born on the cusp, they kind of take on both parts of it. Because
Mm.
one thing with her is that, again, what makes her different than our generation is, yes, people had video cameras and people were doing that, but people were not putting themselves out there on that
Right.
level the way.
You were doing it you're doing it at Christmas, to
Yeah.
yeah, for
Or
posterity. You're not, like, creating content.
yeah, or all of those silly shows and all that stuff she was doing, we did all that stuff too. It just we
Yeah,
didn't have it wasn't
yeah.
recorded,
We didn't
wasn't
have
ever
a
seen. But
videotape recorder.
yeah, so that whole thing, and like having it forever and then editing it and being able to shift it and change it, that's very much her generation. But yeah, she's
Hmm,
right on the cusp of these two
okay.
places. I was actually listening to this very interesting thing about Gen Z and how Gen Z essentially is two generations. Because there's a whole group of Gen Zers that were in college or post college with the pandemic, and then
Mhm,
they came up. They were in college during the time of the women's rights and the Black Lives Matter and all of that. And then there's this other group of Gen Zs that kind of came out and graduated in the time of Biden and all the restrictions. And
mm,
so there's this real difference between these two progressive, and then this other group of Gen Zs that are angry. I just saw that today. It was very interesting.
Oh, okay.
Anywho.
Yeah. Anywho,
Yes.
this is Tessa's specialty. You should check out. You plug your other podcast.
Oh yeah, I have another podcast. It's called The Gen Mess with Tess. I might. I'm not going to stop it, but I think I might revamp it, because talking about the generations, I'm sort of hitting a wall. But yeah, The Gen Mess with Tess. Go check it out. I talk all about the generations and what it's like to work with the generations and how to understand younger people
in the workplace.
Workplace, yes.
Yes. We're becoming like those people who are like,
yeah, you have to explain things to us now. Oh God.
Yeah, we're like, oh, these kids, they don't understand what it's like and what we had to go through and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
I don't really have much else to say. I mean,
it ends with we see a scene of her wedding to Matt.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem very happy. And she just recently did a podcast where she talked about, I guess last year she was like trying to get pregnant, thought they wanted to start a family, and it wasn't really happening. And then she realized that she wasn't really ready. And so, yeah, I mean, you're at the peak of your, the peak of your career here, at least thus far. So,
but
anyway.
but she'll be 31 this year. So, I mean, I can understand, right? She feels the pressure. She feels of, what do I do?
Yeah. Well,
so again, many women have to go through that men don't. I'm at the peak here. Which do I focus on?
Yeah. Well, we will continue to watch and see what she does.
Yeah, Brooke, it seems like you're a call her daddy.
I'm trying to be. I'm trying to understand this younger generation. I don't want to be like an old grandma, like, like people rolling their eyes at me.
Yes.
Trying to keep my finger on the pulse.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, this is how it always works. This is how right? It's just, it's meant to be this way. You don't want the older people to know what you're talking about, or, that's the separation. That's what makes it unique and cool. And that's what makes us old, right? And it's like, this is always going to happen. It's like part of it.
Yeah.
It's just life. So
it is. Life goes on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can subscribe. You can tell a friend about it. You can give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you really like us, you can check out our Patreon. We have weekly bonus episodes. You get all of these free episodes ad-free. And then for our higher tier, we do a couple more bonuses throughout the month. We do a Ask Us Anything and a bonus true crime episode. So check us out at Patreon if you're interested. We are, like we said, we're on YouTube. We're trying to keep up.
Hello.
Hello, YouTube. Nice to meet you. And we're also on all the social media channels, except for that one that's owned by...
Yeah, we'll remain nameless.
We shall not name. But anyway, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.